18 minutes. That's all that stood between a man and his death. November rain hammered the glass. The city didn't sleep. Yellow streetlight spilled into an alley where a black car sat still, headlights off, engine running. High above, behind a closed door, a room reeked of cigar smoke and spilled scotch. 25 men had tried to open the brass box on the desk. 25 men had failed.
It's over.
A drill bit screamed, a spark jumped, then died. And in a room full of desperate men, a strange smell crept through. Not smoke, not metal, burnt sugar, old, as if someone had spilled something on that box a very long time ago, and no one had ever known it mattered. How could a box kill a man? The wheels of a mop bucket squeaked at the threshold. The woman knelt by the rug, wrung out the mop, then looked up just once. Her eyes settled on the brass flower beside the keyhole, and her hand began reaching into her apron. 25 men had tried. 25 men had failed, bank vault specialists. A locksmith flown in from Chicago who claimed he could open anything made of brass. A retired safecracker who had not held a tool in 14 years and had come out of retirement for the money. Engineers, mechanics. A man with a fiber optic scope and a man with liquid nitrogen, and a man with a diamond-tipped drill that cost more than a car. The brass box on the mahogany desk had eaten all of them. It was the size of a hardcover book, dark with age. Heavy as a sleeping child, there was a ledger inside. The ledger held a routing number. The routing number could pull a transfer that would save a man's life before sunrise. Midnight was 18 minutes away, and the only person left in the room who had not yet looked at the box was the woman holding the mop. The mop bucket squeaked. That was the first sound. Yellow plastic wheels on dark hardwood. A whining, cheap noise. The sort of noise nobody hears unless they want to. Nell Vance heard everything. She pushed the bucket through the doorway of the study. Slow, careful. The bucket smelled like ammonia and old water and her own tired skin. She did not look up. She had been told not to look up. She had been told to clean the mud near the Persian rug and then leave. Except the room was full of men, 25 of them, maybe more. She did not count. She did not need to count. She could feel them, sweating, pacing, smelling of metal, burnt brass, and expensive cologne gone sour from too many hours. The study smelled like a wound, cigar smoke, spilled scotch, hot drill bits, the faint chemical tang of ozone where a spark had jumped across a stack of papers, and under all of it, underneath everything, a sweet smell. Old, caramelized. Something Nell knew but could not name, not yet. She knelt by the rug, wrung out the mop. A man behind her was screaming, not loud, quiet screaming, a kind that lives inside a clenched jaw. He was kneeling at the desk. His hand shook around a diamond-tipped rotary drill. His safety goggles had left red rings around his eyes. The drill bit skipped. A spark, a small angry shriek of metal. Damn it. The man pulled the goggles up into his thinning hair. His face was the color of boiled meat. He stared at the brass lockbox on the desk like it had insulted his mother. The box did not care. Nell glanced up. Just once. It was an old box, dark green oxidation along the lip. A heavy brass rosette next to the keyhole, carved like a flower. A lotus, maybe. Hard to tell under the grime. Hard to tell under the years. Her father would have loved it. The thought arrived without permission. It walked into her head wearing her father's boots. Frank Vance, 16 years dead. 16 years next March. She did the math the way she always did the math. Quick. Quiet. Like a prayer she had stopped being able to say out loud. He would have looked at the box and said something like, "Honey, the answer's never where they're drilling." He used to say that about a lot of things. Get her out of here. A different voice. Deeper. Heavy as a refrigerator. Nell looked up again. A mountain of a man stood by the velvet drapes. Suit too tight in the shoulders. Hands clasped in front of him like a priest at a funeral. He smelled like peppermint and gun oil. She had walked past him on the way in. He had looked through her. Now he was looking at her. "She's cleaning the mud," another voice said. "Quieter." Tired. The tired voice came from the leather armchair in the corner. Nell did not turn her head. She knew better than to turn her head when a voice that tired was speaking. Tired voices in rich rooms were always the dangerous ones. She kept mopping. The bucket squeaked again. "Christ," the man in the chair muttered. She heard the soft clink of a glass against wood, heard the man stand up, heard the long, slow exhale of someone who had not slept in 3 days. She did not turn around. She knew the type. She had cleaned for the type, the very rich, the very desperate. Men who lived their whole lives behind big desks and only learned what their bodies sounded like when something broke them open. This man was broken open. She did not need to look to know. Her alarm had gone off at 4 that morning. 4. In the dark. The radiator pipes in her studio apartment banging like somebody beating a drum with a wrench. The pipes always started at 4. She did not know why. She had stopped asking why. The room was the size of a closet with ambition. A mattress on the floor, a milk crate for a nightstand, a lamp she had bought at a yard sale for $2. A folded photograph in a cracked frame, her father in his uniform, her mother behind him, laughing at something only she could see. The photograph faced the door. Nell had put it there on purpose. So it was the first thing she saw when she came home. So she remembered where she came from. So she remembered who she was when nobody else did. The kitchenette smelled like burnt coffee and roach killer. She made tea. She did not own coffee. She had not owned coffee in 3 months. She drank the tea standing up. She counted the cash on the milk crate, $11, plus the 73 in the front pocket of her jacket, plus the 16 in the back pocket, $100. She needed 240. The sticky note on her door had been there for 3 days. Block letters, red marker, pay up or pack up, JJ for Jenkins. Her landlord, a man who smelled like stale beer and cheap menthols, and existed mostly as a fist on the other side of a door. She had until tomorrow. She had counted that too. She thought about her father on the bus downtown. She always thought about her father on the bus. It was a habit. The bus shook in a certain way. The fluorescent tube above her head buzzed in a certain way. It reminded her of riding in his old Chevy when she was small. He had been a cop, a real cop, not a desk cop, not a parade day cop. He came home at 3 in the morning, smelling like wet asphalt and other people's blood, and never told her mother why his hands were shaking. She had been 8 when he died. The fire. She remembered the fire the way you remember a tooth that got pulled. Not the pain. Just the empty place where the pain used to live. Her mother had told her it was an accident. The reports had said it was an accident. The newspapers had said it was an accident. Her mother had not believed any of it. Her mother had been a locksmith. A real one. Not a key-cutting at the mall locksmith. The old world kind. Brass and pin tumblers and antique mechanisms, older than the country they now lived in. She had crossed an ocean with a suitcase full of tools, and a husband who would not live to see his daughter turn 10. Her mother had taught Nell everything: how a lock breathes, how a tumbler tells the truth even when its owner lies, how a key wears a path through brass, the way a man wears a path through grass when he walks the same route every day. Her mother died when Nell was 16. Cancer, quiet, slow. A kind that eats a person from the inside, without leaving a mark on the outside. Nell had not cried at the funeral. She had cried later, alone in a coin laundry on a Tuesday, with a pile of unfolded sheets in her lap and a stranger's quarters jingling in the dryer behind her. She cried for 2 hours, and then she stood up and washed her face and went to her shift. That was 8 years ago. She had been moving ever since. The agency was on the 3rd floor of a building, with no elevator. She climbed the stairs. The stairwell smelled like old paint and cleaning solvent, and the faint, sweet rot of a mouse that had died in the walls sometime last summer. Carla at the desk did not look up. "You're early." "I'm always early." Castellano Place, East Wing, 11 to 4. "Don't talk to anyone." Nell stopped at the door. "Castellano?" Carla finally looked up. 40-something, bleached hair, eyebrows drawn on with a pencil that had been sharpened too many times. "You got a problem with the address?" No. Then don't ask questions about it. The girl who worked at Tuesday came back crying. The girl who worked at Wednesday didn't come back at all. You're the third name on my list. Why me? Carla shrugged. You don't talk. The house likes that. Nell took the slip. She walked back down the stairs slower than she had walked up. She had never heard of the Castellanos, not by name. But you did not need to know a name to know a shape. The shape was always the same in this city. A house too big, a driveway too long, a staff that did not ask questions, money that did not pass through banks. She thought about her father. He used to come home and sit at the kitchen table and write names in a notebook. Names she was not supposed to see. Names her mother told her never to ask about. She wondered suddenly, irrationally, if Castellano had ever been one of those names. She told herself it did not matter. She told herself she was being dramatic. She told herself a lot of things on that bus ride. None of them turned out to be true. The driveway was longer than her block, crushed white gravel, the sort that crunched expensively under your shoes. Iron gates. 2 security cameras she counted on the way in. 3 more she did not count because she did not want to look like a person counting. The house was the color of old bone, 3 stories. Stone, ivy on the east wall that somebody paid somebody else to keep neat. A pair of stone dogs on either side of the front steps. Their faces had been worn smooth by 100 years of weather. They looked patient. She went around to the service's entrance. A woman in a black uniform let her in without a word. The woman had the face of somebody who had once been beautiful and had decided at some point to stop bothering. She handed Nell a key card and pointed down a hallway. East wing. Mud got tracked through. Mr. Bregan wants it gone before midnight. Bregan. Nell filed the name. The east wing was empty. She always worked the same way. Top to bottom, outside to inside. Dry first, then wet. She had learned it from a Polish woman named Magda when she was 19. Magda used to say the dust tells you who lived here. You just have to listen. The east wing had a lot of dust, not on the floor. The floor was spotless. On the picture frames, on the tops of the door jambs, in the high corners where the crown molding met the ceiling. Dust that only collects when nobody has loved a room in a long time. She mopped. She wiped. She thought about her father's. She thought about her mother. She thought about Jenkins's note on her door. At 10:45, she heard footsteps in the hallway, heavy, fast. The sound of a man not bothering to pretend he wasn't coming. Bregan filled the doorway. He was bigger up close. 6'5", maybe. Shoulders like a doorway. A face that had been broken in more than one place and reset by somebody who did not care if it healed straight. The lines around his eyes said somewhere past 50. The set of his jaw said, do not ask. You mop. Main study. Now, I'm finishing here. Now, she picked up the bucket. She did not argue. She had learned a long time ago not to argue with men whose voices made the walls vibrate. The study smelled wrong before she walked in. She stopped in the hallway. Just for a second. Just long enough to take a breath through her nose. Smoke. Scotch. Ozone. Sweat. Metal. And something else. Something sweet and burnt and old. Caramelized sugar. She frowned. There was no kitchen near this room. She pushed the door open. The room was full of men in expensive suits and grease-stained overalls. Hands on hips, hands on faces, hands rubbing the backs of necks. The body language of people who were losing. A long fluorescent work light had been clamped to the edge of a mahogany desk and pointed at something small and brass in the center. She did not look at the brass thing, not yet. She looked at the man in the leather chair. He looked carved out of exhaustion. Tall, dark hair, 3 days of stubble, a tie loose at the collar, a glass of scotch in his hand that had stopped being cold a long time ago. His eyes were the part she remembered later. Bloodshot, hollow. The eyes of a man counting down to something he could not stop. She knew that look. She had seen it on her father's face the week before he died. She looked away fast. She walked to the rug and she knelt, and she wrung out the mop, and she pretended she was somewhere else. The drill screamed for another 20 minutes. Nell mopped the same square of hardwood 3 times. The man at the desk gave up. He pushed his goggles up. He turned around. He spoke in the careful voice of a man, delivering bad news to a wealthier Mr. Castellano. I'm telling you, this isn't a standard pin tumbler. It's a deadlock mechanism wired to a secondary glass vial. So that was his name, Castellano. She filed it. The vibration alone is risky, the locksmith said. If I apply any more torque, the acid drops. The paper inside turns to sludge. I can't bypass it. Nobody can. The man in the chair did not yell. He did not throw the glass. He set it down. Slow, quiet. The smallest click of crystal against wood. You are the 25th man, he said. His voice was a rasp. Not loud. Not angry. Stripped of everything except fatigue. I brought you in from Chicago because you told me you could open bank vaults with a paperclip. Now you're beaten by a humidor my grandfather bought in Naples. It's a bespoke acoustic lock, sir. Get out, the locksmith flinched. He reached for his tool bag. Leave the tools. That was Bregan. From the drapes. Voice low. A low that does not need to be loud to land. The locksmith left the tools. He left the room. The door clicked shut behind him, and Nell, kneeling by the rug with a wet mop in her hand, looked up at the brass box for the first time. 25 men had stared at the keyhole. She did not stare at the keyhole. She stared at the rosette next to it. It was molded in the shape of a flower. A lotus. The petals curled outward in a careful pattern. It should have been smooth, polished by years of decorative dusting. Instead, it was crusted in something dark and hard. She tilted her head. The light caught the surface. There a hairline seam, running around the base of the flower. Almost invisible. Almost the hole had a faint pale ring around its inner lip. Friction wear. A key had gone in and out of it. Maybe within the past year. Maybe within the past month. But the lotus was sealed. She squinted. She knew that smell. She had smelled it 20 seconds ago, walking through the door. Caramelized sugar, old cognac spilled decades ago. Mixed with cigar smoke, heated by sunlight through the study window for 1,000 summers, cooled by 1,000 winters. Residue that bonds to brass and turns into a substance harder than the brass underneath it. Somebody had spilled something on this box a long time ago. And nobody had ever cleaned it. Because nobody had ever needed to. Because nobody had ever known it mattered. Because the men who looked at this box looked at it the way men in expensive suits look at everything. From the front. From the top. From the angle the world had taught them to look from. Her father's voice, honey. The answer's never where they're drilling. She felt the floor under her knees go, a little soft. The keyhole was a decoy. The keyhole had always been a decoy. The lotus was the lock. She stood up. She did not mean to. Her knees just did it. You're working on the wrong part. The words came out of her mouth before she could stop them. The silence that followed was a physical thing. A pressure. A held breath. The kind of quiet that arrives in a room and changes the temperature. She did not turn her head. She kept her eyes on the box. Briggs moved first. She heard the soft scuff of his shoe on the hardwood. She felt him step toward her. The man in the chair stopped him. She did not see how. She only knew because Bregan stopped. A new sound. Leather creaking. The man in the chair was standing up. What did you say? Not a question. A command dressed as a question. She turned her head. He was looking at her, really looking. For the first time since she had walked into the room. She had been clocked once before like this, by a cop, in a grocery store, when she was 17 and starving and had not paid for a can of soup. The cop had looked at her, and had not seen a thief. He had seen a hungry kid. He had paid for the soup himself, and walked her to the door, and told her not to do it again. This man was not that cop. This man's eyes did the math on her in 3 seconds. Cheap jacket, cheap shoes, hair tied back with a rubber band. Knuckles cracked from bleach. Apron stained with somebody else's spilled wine. She watched him add up the columns. She watched the answer arrive in his face. He did not look impressed. He did not look angry. He looked for 1/2 of 1 second like a man who had been drowning for 3 days and had just felt something brush against his foot under the water. Say it again. You're working on the wrong part. The keyhole, it's a decoy. He took a step toward the desk. How do you know? Friction wear. The keyhole's been used. Recently. Whoever owns this opens it sometimes. They just don't open it through the keyhole. Then where? She pointed at the rosette. The flower. Bregan made a sound. Not quite a laugh. A cousin of a laugh. Boss. She's a maid. I heard you the first 3 times you said it, Marco. So that was his name, Marco Bregan. She filed it. The man whose name she would learn was Adrian Castellano, but who right now was just a tall, tired shape in a too-big room, took another step up toward the desk. The flower, yes. What's wrong with it? It's a pressure plate. It's supposed to depress. It can't. Somebody spilled something on it a long time ago. Cognac, brandy, something with sugar in it. Mixed with the smoke in this room, crystallized into the seam around the petals, and it cemented the plate to the casing. Your guys with the drills could have stayed all night. They would never have gotten in. They were trying to pick a solid block of brass. A long pause. The fluorescent work light hummed. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked. She heard her own heart in her ears. How do you know this? She wiped her hand on her apron. She did it because she did not know what else to do with her hand. Because I scrubbed dried liquor off your baseboards. Every Tuesday, a muscle moved along his jaw. She had said the wrong thing. She had said it too plain. She had said it like a woman who was not afraid of him. And she should have been afraid of him, because every other person in this house was afraid of him. And she had just made herself stand out in a room where standing out was the worst thing a person could do. Too late, the words were already out. He looked at her. He looked at the clock. How long do you need to open it? Yes, 2 minutes, show me. She did not ask for permission. She reached into her apron pocket and she pulled out 2 things. A plastic spray bottle, white vinegar, her secret for hard water stains and brass tarnish, and a dozen other things her mother had taught her. A plastic cigarette lighter, pink, cheap. From a gas station off the interstate, Marco Bregan moved his hand, just a little. Toward the bulge under his jacket, the man at the desk lifted one finger. Marco stopped. Nell unscrewed the cap of the spray bottle. The vinegar smelled the way it always smelled. Sharp, sour, a clean smell, a correcting smell. A smell that said, I am here to fix what other things have ruined. She poured 3 drops onto the lotus, just 3. The liquid found the seam the way water always finds the seam, by instinct, by gravity, by the patient logic of small things that have all the time in the world. She struck the lighter. The flame jumped up, small, orange, trembling. She held it a 1/4 inch above the brass. She did not look at the man in the suit. She did not look at Marco. She did not look at the clock. She looked at the flower. The vinegar hissed. The smell changed. Burnt sugar. Boiled vinegar. A smell that should not have existed in a room like this, with its leather and its old wood and its $300 scotch. A smell that belonged in a back kitchen at the end of a long shift. She counted in her head. 10, 20, 30. The brass began to weep. A dark amber sludge bled out of the hairline seam. The crystallized resin was melting. Decades of cognac and smoke breaking down under the patient heat of a gas station lighter, and 3 drops of drops. She clicked the lighter off. She did not have anything to wipe the residue with. She used the hem of her apron. She wrapped it around her thumb to protect it from the hot brass. She pressed hard. She pressed the center of the lotus the way her mother had taught her, to press hidden plates on old jewelry boxes. Steady, direct, with the meat of the thumb. Not the tip. Something clicked, then another click. Then a series of clicks, fast and clean, like dominoes falling in a closet behind a closed door. The brass lid popped up, a 1/4 inch. Just a 1/4 inch, but it was open. The smell that came out of the box was different from every other smell in the room. Old paper, dry leather, the dust of decades. A smell that lives only in places that have not been opened since the people who closed them were still alive. Sel stepped back. Her thumb was burning. She did not show it. She wiped her hands on her apron and she looked at the floor. She did not look at him. She could not look at him. She had just done something she could not undo. The room was silent for a count. She stopped counting. Then Marco Bragan said very softly, "Jesus Christ." Then the man in the suit walked to the desk. He did not look at her as he passed. He passed close enough that she could smell him. Expensive cedar, old scotch. The faint salt of 3 days of sweat. He reached for the lid. His knuckles were white. He lifted it. Inside, on a bed of velvet that had been eaten by moths somewhere along the way, was a small black leather ledger. Frayed edges, cracked cover ordinary. He picked it up. He held it in both hands. And then, the way a man does after holding his breath for 3 days, without knowing he was holding his breath, he exhaled. His shoulders dropped. A whole inch. She heard the breath leave him. It was the first human sound he had made. "Marco, boss, call Gabriel. Tell him we have the routing numbers. Tell him to pull the transfer to the cartel account. Tonight now." On it, Marco left the room. The door clicked shut. He set the ledger down. He turned. He looked at her again. Differently this time. Not the math from before. Something quieter. Something that had stopped trying to figure out what she was, and had started trying to figure out what she meant. "I owe you $50,000. She lifted her eyes. The cash was stacked on the desk. Crisp. Unbanded. Bills that had never seen a bank. They sat in neat towers next to the open box. "No, excuse me? I don't want it." He blinked. It was the smallest thing, a man blinking. But she watched it happen, and she knew she had become, in that one blink, a problem he had not expected to have. "Take the money." "No, you opened the box. I needed your guy to stop drilling so I could finish mopping." "That's a lie." "Maybe. What do you want? To go home?" He stared at her. She was not what he was used to. She knew that. People were always one of two things in front of money like that: greedy or grateful. He had a script for greedy. He had a script for grateful. She was neither. She was a woman who had walked into the wrong room with a mop and a lighter, and was now trying to walk out of it before the door figured out how to lock. "You have a name?" "You don't need it. You just saved my brother's life." She froze. She did not mean to. Her body did it on its own. The word brother did it. The word saved did it. The phrase together did it. Because she had spent 16 years thinking about a brother who had not been saved. A father who had not been saved. A locksmith mother who had not been saved by any of the people she had spent her life keeping safe behind brass. She felt her eyes sting. She blinked it away. "Nell, Nell." He tested it. The way a man tests a stare he is not sure will hold his weight. "You should not be a maid, Nell. It pays please." "Not well. Well enough. How much do you need?" "240. For my rent," he laughed. Not a real laugh. A short, sharp, surprised sound. The laugh a man makes when life has just shown him something so small and so ordinary that he has forgotten such things exist. He pulled $300 bills from a loose stack near his glass. He held them out. 300. 240 for the rent. 60 for a cab home. "Don't take the bus tonight?" She looked at the money. She looked at him. She took the money. Her fingers brushed his palm. His hand was warm, calloused. The hand of a man who had not always sat behind a desk. The contact was less than a second. It was nothing. She pulled her hand back. She folded the bills. She put them in her apron. And then, because she could not stop herself, because some part of her was still her father's daughter, she turned and looked at the brass box plus one more time. Inside, next to where the ledger had been, half hidden in the moth-eaten velvet, something else. Something small, something her father had carried every day of his life, until the day he didn't. A police badge, rusted at the edges, tarnished in the middle. But the shield was still legible. The number was still legible. The name engraved at the bottom was still legible. Frank Vance. The room tilted. It did not actually tilt. She knew it did not actually tilt. Rooms do not tilt. Floors do not move. The world is a stable place that obeys physics, but the room tilted. She heard her own breath stop in her throat. She heard the grandfather clock in the hallway tick. She heard, somewhere far away, Marco Bragan's voice on the phone in another room, talking to someone named Gabriel about a transfer to a cartel account. She heard nothing else. The badge sat in the box. The man named Adrian Castellano was looking at the ledger. He had not seen it. He had not seen the badge. He did not know what was sitting in the velvet 4 inches from the book that was going to save his brother. She moved her hand. She did not do bailment. She did not think about it. Her hand moved on its own, 3 fingers. Apron hem still wrapped around the burned thumb. She reached past the ledger. She closed her fingers around the badge. She slid it into the apron pocket with the $300. She did not breathe. She did not breathe for what felt like a year. He turned. He looked at her. His eyes went to her hand. Just for a second. Just for a flicker. She held his gaze. She did not blink. She did not look away. She had cleaned for the rich for 6 years. She had learned how to be invisible the way some people learn how to play piano. By practice. By repetition. By 1,000 small humiliations that teach a body how to not exist on command. She was invisible now. She was a maid. She was a mop. She was a yellow plastic bucket on dark hardwood. He looked away. Marco will drive you home. I'll take the cab. Marco will drive you home. I'd rather take the cab. A long pause. He almost smiled. He did not smile. Cab, then. She nodded. She picked up the bucket. The wheels squeaked again on her way out. The same cheap whining noise. She did not look back. She did not let herself look back. The badge was a weight in her apron, heavier than the $300. Heavier than the spray bottle. Heavier than every piece of clothing she had ever worn. Heavier than her father's coffin. She walked down the long, dim hallway, past the service kitchen, past the laundry, out the back door into the cold November air. The driveway crunched under her shoes. She did not cry. She did not let herself cry, not yet. Not until the cab, not until the apartment. Not until the door was locked and locked. The lamp was on, and she was alone with the only thing that mattered. She walked. She did not look back at the house. She did not look at the iron gates as they opened in front of her. She did not look at the black sedan that pulled out of the driveway behind her. Lights off, 20 feet back, matching her pace. She did not see it, not yet. She would see it, but not tonight. The apartment was cold. Not winter cold. Not a cold you fix with a blanket. The other kind. A cold that lives in the walls of a building nobody loves anymore and seeps out through the plaster at 3 in the morning to remind you that you are alone. Nell stood in the dark. She did not turn on the lamp. She did not take off her jacket. She stood with her back against the door. Both hands flat against the wood behind her. The badge in her apron. The $300 in her apron. The bottle of vinegar in her apron. Everything she owned that mattered tonight. In one pocket, against her hip, weighing more than her body. She listened. Old buildings talk. She had learned that. Old buildings talk, and you have to listen for the voice of yours, so you know when the voice changes. The radiator clicked. The pipe in the wall hummed. The man in 3P coughed twice and then was quiet. The woman in 4A above her dropped something heavy and then said something Nell could not hear. The building was normal. The building was telling her the truth. She slid to the door. She sat on the floor. She pulled the badge out. She held it in both hands the way you hold a baby bird that has fallen out of a nest. Not because it is fragile, because you are afraid of yourself. She turned it over. 2 words and a year, in her father's handwriting. Castellano. 1998. Trust no one. She read it 3 times. She read it the way she used to read her father's notes when she was small and could not yet understand half the words. Slow, with her finger. Saying each letter under her breath like a prayer that was not yet a prayer. She let herself cry. 2 minutes, no longer. Her mother's rule. Crying was a thing with a time limit. Her mother had cried for 1 hour after the funeral, And then she had stood up, washed her face, and lived for 8 more years without crying once. Nell wiped her cheek with the back of her wrist. She got up. She turned on the lamp. She went to the closet. There was a box. There had always been a box, cardboard, brown, strapped shut with packing tape that had yellowed at the edges. It had moved with her through 4 apartments. She had never opened it. She had opened it once, when she was 19. For 3 minutes. She had looked at the top 3 things and closed it again and not opened it for 5 years. She opened it now. She pulled it down off the shelf. She set it on the milk crate. She cut the tape with a paring knife from the kitchenette. The blade was dull. The tape resisted. She sawed through it anyway. The smell came up: old paper, pencil shavings, the faint, dry ghost of a cologne her father had worn that she had not been able to find in any store since she was 12. She breathed it in. She held it. She let it out. She started with the top. A notebook, spiral-bound, blue cover. Her father's handwriting, small and neat and cop-trained on every page. She flipped through it. Case notes, dates, names, small drawings in the margins. He had drawn her face once on a corner. She remembered him doing it at the kitchen table while she ate cereal. She set the notebook down. She kept going. A folder, manila, tied with string. She untied it. Inside were Xeroxes. Old ones, faded at the edges and gone purple in the middle. Police reports, bank statements, a photograph of a man getting out of a car in front of a restaurant. The restaurant was called Aura. She knew that restaurant. Everybody in the city knew that restaurant. The man getting out of the car was younger and thinner, and had more hair than the man she had met 3 hours ago. But the eyes were the same. The jaw was the same. The way he held a cigarette was the same. It was not Adrian, it was his father. She did not know his name, not yet, but she knew his face. She knew because Adrian had Adrian's father's face, just 25 years younger. She knew the way you know a song you have not heard since childhood. The moment somebody hums 2 notes, she set the photograph down. She kept going. More photographs, more reports. A list of names in her father's handwriting on a yellow legal pad. 6 names, 5 of them crossed out, 1 circled. The circled one was Castellano. The bottom of the page had a date, March 14, 1998. Her father had died on March 17, 1998, 3 days. She stared at the date. 3 days. She had been 8. She had eaten a peanut butter sandwich at her grandmother's house while her mother had gone to the morgue to identify what was left of him. Her grandmother had told her there had been a fire. She had nodded. She had asked for milk. She had not understood any of it. 3 days. He had circled Castellano, and then 3 days later he had died. She put the legal pad down, very carefully, as if it might burn her if she handled it wrong. She kept going. A small envelope at the bottom of the box. She picked it up. Her father's handwriting on the front. 1 word, Eleanor. Her mother's name. She opened the envelope, a single sheet of paper, folded twice. Us. If you are reading this, I am gone. There is a man named Vincent Krall. He works for the Castellanos. He is the one. The bank trails go through him. The bodies go through him. Everything goes through him. I have not told anyone. I cannot trust anyone in the department. I am sorry I am writing this on a piece of paper instead of saying it to your face. I love you. I love Nell. Tell her I was a good cop. Tell her I am sorry I was not also a good father. F. She read it twice. Then she read it a 3rd time. Then she set the paper on the floor in front of her, and she stared at the name in the middle. Vincent Krall. She said it out loud. The apartment did not answer. It did not have to. She already knew that name was going to walk back into her life within the next 48 hours. She just did not yet know in what shape. She did not sleep that night. She sat on the floor with the box, the letter, and the badge. And she read every page of every notebook her father had left behind. She read until the gray of morning came up over the brick wall outside her window. She read until her eyes felt like they had been packed in salt. She made tea. She drank it standing. She thought about Jenkins downstairs. She walked down at 7. She knocked on his door. He opened it in an undershirt that had once been white and had been a long time ago. His breath was a wall. He looked at her like she was a tax bill. She handed him $300 bills. He blinked. He counted them. He counted them twice. You hit a number. No. Then where'd you get this? None of your business. He squinted. He held the bills up to the hallway light. He rubbed the watermark. He sniffed one of them. She did not know why. She did not ask. He grunted. He closed the door. She did not get a receipt. She had not expected one. The deadbolt slid into place, and she stood in the hallway, and she felt, for the first time in a year, that her body was not made entirely of debt. It did not ever lasted. She went back upstairs. She washed her face. She changed her shirt. She put the badge in her sock. She put her father's letter in the inside pocket of her jacket against her ribs. She did not know yet that she was being followed. She found out at the bus stop, a black sedan, same one, from the night before. She did not know it was the same one. She did not have to. The shape of a car a person watches you from is a shape that registers in the lizard. Part of the brain even when the eyes pretend not to see it. It was parked across the street. Engine running. She turned her head. The driver did not look at her. She turned her head back. She got on the bus. The sedan pulled away from the curb 30 seconds later and slid into traffic behind it. She rode for 14 blocks. She got off at a stop she had no business getting off at. She walked into a coffee shop with 2 exits. She walked out the back. She walked 4 blocks. Took an alley. Took another alley. Walked into a department store. Rode the escalator to the 3rd floor. Rode it back down. Walked out a different door. When she got to the subway, the sedan was nowhere. That did not mean it was gone. It just meant it was no longer her problem. At this exact moment, she rode the train into the financial district. She did not look at anyone. She did not look at her own reflection in the window. She thought about the name, Vincent Krall, Vincent Krall, Vincent Krall. She thought it like a heartbeat all the way downtown. The building was a knife of glass, 44 floors. Black marble lobby. A building that did not have a sign on the front because if you needed a sign, you did not belong inside. She walked in. The security guard saw her shoes first. He always did. Cheap shoes. Scuffed soles. He started to lift the kind of polite professional condescension a man like him had been trained to deploy on women like her. He opened his mouth to ask for a delivery slip. Suite 4400. He stopped. He looked at her face. He typed something into a terminal she could not see. She watched the air go out of him. He did not ask her name. He did not ask for ID. He slid a blank white key card across the counter. Express elevator. Left bank. Last car. She took the card. The marble was cold under her shoes. The elevator was the kind that did not have buttons. You swiped. It went. You arrived. The doors opened on a reception area that did not have a receptionist. Mark O'Brien was standing by the window. He had not slept either. She could tell by the set of his shoulders. By the way he held his arms folded across his chest. By the small twitch in his jaw when he turned and looked at her. He did not greet her. He nodded once. He's waiting. Where? End of the hall. She did not wait for him to lead. She walked past him. She felt his eyes on her back. She felt him do the math. She wondered very briefly what answer he was getting. She did not wonder long. Adrian Castellano was at his desk. He was clean-shaven, white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows. A different man from the one in the leather chair last night. The exhaustion was still there, but it had been pushed somewhere, stored. Locked in a drawer he would open later when nobody was watching. He did not look up. He let her stand there. He tapped his tablet. She crossed her arms. She did not fidget. She had grown up watching her father play this game across a kitchen table, with men her father did not trust. She knew what the game was. The man who spoke first lost. She did not speak. The silence stretched. A full 30 seconds. 40. He looked up. His eyes had not changed. The same math, the same quiet weighing of a thing he could not yet name. You didn't bring the mop. You told me not to. How are your hands? She looked down. She had not noticed her hands. She did, now. Her right thumb had blistered along the pad, a red, angry crescent where she had pressed the hot brass. She taped it with a cheap bandage from the drugstore on the corner. Healed. They're not. They will be. A flicker. He almost smiled. He did not smile. Sit down. I'd rather stand. Sit down, Nell. She sat. The chair was too low. The leather was too cold. She suspected this was on purpose. She suspected everything about this room was on purpose. The chairs, the desk, the view of the river out the window behind him, the half-empty cup of espresso, the single silver pen lying parallel to the edge of the desk at a perfect 90-degree angle. He folded his hands. I have a problem. I know. You don't know which one. You have a lot of problems. He almost smiled again. He did not. I have a rest. Shra. Stopped she? Watched imps. How do you know that? Everyone knows that. That's not what I asked. I clean for the rich. The rich talk about your restaurant. What do they say? That the duck is good. That the wine list is better. That a table on Friday night requires a phone call from someone whose name they will not mention. He almost smiled. Third time. He'd. Did not. My restaurant is bleeding money. How? That's what I want you to tell me. She did not answer for a moment. She was thinking. She was thinking about her father's folder. She was thinking about the photograph of Adrian's father getting out of a car in front of that exact restaurant. She was thinking about Vincent Crawl, a man whose name she had read for the first time 8 hours ago, a man she was now sitting one floor away from, a man who was somewhere in this building right now, breathing the same recycled air she was breathing. She thought about saying no. She thought about getting up, walking out, taking the train back to her side of the city, putting the badge in a safe deposit box, living the rest of her life as a woman who had once cleaned for a Mafia boss and then walked away. She thought about her father. She thought about her father at the kitchen table at midnight. She thought about the circled name on the yellow legal pad. 10,000, she said. To look, he nodded once. 50 if you find it. Cash, cash, tonight. Half tonight. Half when you find the leak. All tonight. A long pause. He reached into the drawer. He pulled out an envelope. He set it on the desk. He pushed it toward her with 2 fingers. She did not pick it up. Not yet. She had more thing to ask. Who runs the books? For the restaurant? For everything. He paused. She watched him pause. She watched him decide whether to lie. She watched him decide not to. A man named Vincent Crawl. She did not blink. She did not move. She did not breathe wrong. She picked up the envelope. I start tonight. She walked out. She did not look back. She did not need to. She knew he was watching her go. She walked past Marco on the way to the elevator. He uncrossed his arms. Miss, she stopped. Mr. Castellano said to tell you. The uniform's at the staffing agency. Pick it up by 6. Aura's expecting a new night cleaner. Don't tell them otherwise. Understood, miss.
Yes. One more thing.
What? He says don't take the bus tonight either. She looked at him, he looked at her. She did not say thank you. He did not seem to expect it. The elevator doors opened. She stepped in. She rode down 44 floors. In a silence hummed, in her ears like a held note, on a piano. When the doors opened in the lobby, she breathed out for what felt like the first time since she had stepped in. Aura smelled like money. It smelled like money the way only restaurants in a certain price bracket smell like money. Truffles, cold butter, cured meat. Bread that had been baked 4 hours ago and was now sitting on a silver tray under a linen napkin waiting for somebody whose time was worth more than the bread. She arrived at 10. The dinner service was still running. She came in through the back. A kid with a face full of acne pointed at the supply closet and went back to his phone. She changed in the bathroom. The uniform was navy blue. Polyester. 2 sizes too big. The factory wrap still smelled like formaldehyde. The shirt scratched her collarbone. She did not care. She did not care, because she was no longer the woman who cared about uniforms. She was the woman who had her father's letter against her ribs and his badge in her sock, and a name she was going to find before sunrise. She rolled her cart out into the hallway. She started where she always started, top to bottom, outside to inside, dry first. Then wet. She watched everything. She listened to everything. She did not look like she was watching. She did not look like she was listening. She wiped the chrome of the espresso machine. She polished the rail along the bar. She refilled the soap dispenser in the women's bathroom and refilled the paper towels in the men's. She mopped the kitchen floor twice. She emptied the trash 3 times. She counted. She counted bottles in the wine rack against the digital inventory pinned to the stockroom clipboard. The clipboard said 40 bottles of the Bordeaux had moved that week. The recycling bin held 22 corks and 22 punted bottoms. 18 bottles were missing from the math. She counted napkins. She counted glassware. She counted the small ramekins of imported sea salt that lived in a labeled drawer in the kitchen. The math was wrong everywhere. The math was wrong in the way. Math is wrong when somebody is taking small, careful bites and hoping nobody is hungry enough to count. She watched the staff, the line, cook with the tattooed forearms. The prep guy who stayed an hour past his shift to clean a meat slicer that did not need cleaning. The bartender who kept his eyes on the front door instead of his hands. She watched the manager. His name was Trent Holloway. She had read it on a nameplate above an office door. He was 40 maybe, polished. A polish a man builds when he has decided the world will respect him, if he can just keep the shoes shined and the hair combed and the tie straight. He was sweating at 10:30 in the kitchen. In November, in a restaurant kept at a steady 68 degrees. He was sweating again at 11:15 when she passed him in the hallway outside his glass-walled office. He was sweating again at midnight when she watched his reflection in the polished steel of the walk-in freezer door as he emerged from the refrigerator pushing a small utility cart. On the cart sat 3 white plastic tubs, the kind they used for rendering fat. He did not push the cart to the disposal chute. He pushed it down the corridor to the laundry hampers. She kept polishing. She did not turn her head. She watched him in the freezer reflection. He moved fast. The fast of a man who had done this before. He unlatched the tubs. He pulled out vacuum-sealed bricks of meat. She knew the marbling. Everyone knew the marbling. A5 Wagyu, the kind that sold for more per pound than her rent. He pulled out 2 unmarked tins, beluga. Probably. She could smell the truffles from 15 feet away, the earth in them, the damp dirt, the deep musk that even good packaging could not contain. He buried it all in the canvas hampers. He layered the linens on top. He buried it deep. Wine-stained napkins, heavy tablecloths. He worked with the practiced calm of a man who had buried things before. She did not move. She kept her rag on the freezer door. He finished. He pushed the cart back to the refrigerator. He came back out without the tubs. He walked down the hallway toward his office. She heard his office door close. She did not move for another full minute. She breathed. She thought. The laundry truck came at 5. It picked up the hampers and it drove them, in theory, to an industrial cleaner. In practice, it drove them somewhere else first, a drop, a swap. A second location, the food was untraceable. The receipts were already balanced in the books of spoilage. The driver was almost certainly paid. The accountant who wrote off the spoilage was almost certainly paid. The accountant, Vincent Crawl. Her hand stopped moving. She made it move again. She finished polishing the freezer. She wheeled her cart forward. She walked toward the office hallway. She had 3 hours until the truck came. She had 3 hours to look at one more thing. She knew which thing. The records room was the end of the hallway. It was locked. Of course it was locked. She had assumed it would be. She crouched beside the door. She pulled a folded paper clip out of her apron pocket. She had bent it on the train ride over. She had bent it the way her mother had bent the first paper clip Nell had ever opened a lock with on the backlit porch in the long warm summer after her father had died. She slid it into the keyhole. She closed her eyes. She listened. A lock is a sentence. That was what her mother used to say. A lock is a sentence, and the pins are the words. And you cannot read the sentence with your eyes. You have to read it with your fingers. She felt the first pin set, the second, the third, the fourth was sticky. The fourth was the one whoever installed this lock had hoped would beat any amateur with a piece of wire. She did not rush. She did not push. She breathed. She turned the paper clip a quarter-degree counter clockwise. The pin set, the lock turned. She opened the door. She closed it behind her. She did not turn on the overhead light. She used the small flashlight, clipped to her keychain. It made a small circle of yellow on the wall of file cabinets. Rhymes. She moved fast. She did not have time to be slow. She found the 1998 cabinet. She found the drawer marked personnel. She pulled it open. She thumbed the files. Most of them were what she expected. Old line cooks, old bartenders, old waiters who had moved on or died or gone to better restaurants in better cities. Names she had never heard of. She kept going. She found B. Bregan. She pulled the file. She opened it under the small yellow circle of her flashlight. The first page was a tax form. The second page was a hire date. The third page was a personnel review. The fourth page was a photograph. Marco Bregan, 25 years younger. Hair he did not have anymore. A jaw that had not yet been broken in 3 places. Eyes that were the same eyes she had looked at 3 hours ago, across the lobby of a building made of glass. The fifth page was a different photograph. It was paper-clipped to the back of his file. It did not belong in his file. Somebody had hidden it there. It was a photograph of a man in a leather jacket standing next to a black car. He was talking to another man whose face had been turned away from the camera. The man in the leather jacket was Marco Bregan. The man whose face had been turned away from the camera was wearing a sport coat. Below the coat she could see a holster. Below the holster, she could see the corner of something, a police shield. She turned the photograph over. A date stamp, February 22, 1998. 3 weeks before her father died. She did not breathe. She turned the photograph back over. She stared at it, under the yellow circle of her flashlight. She tried to see the face of the man in the sport coat. She could not see his face. She could see his hand. She could see his wrist. She could see a watch on that wrist. A watch she had not seen in 16 years. A watch with a cracked crystal and a leather band gone dark at the wear points, her father's watch. She had not seen that watch since the morning of March 17, 1998. She had not seen it because it had not been on his body when they pulled what was left of him out of the fire. The detective on the case had told her mother the watch had probably melted. Her mother had said nothing. Her mother had known that watches do not melt. Watches survive fires the way teeth do. The watch had not been on him because somebody had taken it off him before the fire. The man in the leather jacket had been talking to her father 3 weeks before her father died. The man in the leather jacket was Marco Bregan. She felt something twist in her chest. Her ears rang. She did not know what to think. She had spent the last 6 hours assuming Marco Bregan was an enforcer, a man who did what he was paid to do. She had assumed if anyone in the Castellano organization had killed her father, it was Marco Bregan or someone like him. But this photograph did not look like an enforcer meeting a target. This photograph looked like 2 men passing something between them. A handoff, an informant. She put the photograph in her apron. She closed the file. She put the file back. She turned to leave. She had 1 foot toward the door when she heard the lock click. Not her lock. The other one, the outer lock. Somebody was opening the records room from the outside. She killed her flashlight. She dropped behind the cabinet. The door opened. The fluorescent overhead snapped on. A man walked in. She did not see his face. She saw his shoes, Italian expensive. Shoes that did not crease at the toe because they had been built by a craftsman in a small shop in Florence who had passed his trade down to his son. She did not need his face. She knew who he was the moment he spoke. His voice was low and patient, and carried in it the slow, careful cadence of a man who had not raised it in 30 years and did not intend to start tonight. "You can come out now, Miss Vance." She did not move. She did not breathe. She heard him walk to a cabinet. She heard him slide a drawer open. She heard him slide it closed again. "I've been waiting for you since 10:30, he said. "I assume you'll come out when you're ready." She closed her eyes. She put her hand in her apron and felt the photograph. She put her other hand against the cool metal of the cabinet beside her. She breathed. She stood up. The man at the other cabinet did not turn around, not yet. He was a tall man, lean, silver hair, trimmed close at the sides, a charcoal suit that fit him the way a knife fits a sheath. He was looking at a file. "Your father had a lovely hand," he said. "Did you know that? He printed everything. Capital letters. Never cursive. He told me once that cursive was for liars and lawyers. I have always remembered that." He turned around. 55, maybe older. The eyes of a man who had not slept badly a single night in his life. Because he was the thing other people lost sleep about, he smiled. It was a small smile, polite, almost warm. "Vincent Krall," he said. "I believe you've been looking for me." Nell did not speak. She could not yet make her mouth work. He set the file on the cabinet. He folded his hands in front of him. "Your father came very close, Miss Vance. He really did. He was a clever man. Cleverer than most of the men in this room have ever been. He did not deserve what happened to him. I want you to know that. I want you to know that I respected him a great deal." She found her voice. "You killed him." "Yes," he said it the way a man says yes when asked if it is raining outside. "But I did respect him." She felt the room narrow. She felt the badge in her sock. She felt the letter against her ribs. She felt the photograph in her apron. She felt every promise she had made silently to a dead years gather itself into a single point behind her sternum. She did not move. Krall studied her. "You have his eyes," he said. "I noticed it the moment Adrian mentioned your name this morning. He told me about a maid who opened the box. He didn't mention the name at first. He mentioned the name later, Nell Vance. I almost laughed. I almost said, 'Adrian, do you know who that is?' But I didn't, because that would have been giving you away." "Why? Why didn't I tell him?" "Yes," he shrugged. A small economical shrug, "because I wanted to meet you first. I wanted to see what kind of woman Frank Vance's daughter had grown into." She did not answer. He smiled again. "You may keep the photograph, by the way. It's not the only copy." Her hand twitched toward her apron. She did not let it go all the way. "I want you to understand something, Miss Vance. You are not going to leave this organization. Not now. Not next week. Not in 6 months. You walked into Adrian Castellano's study with a bottle of vinegar and you opened a box his grandfather built. And you became, in that moment, something the rest of us cannot become. Useful. Adrian will not let go of you. He has not had a useful person in his life in a long time. And you, what about me? Are you going to let go of me?" He laughed. A small dry sound. "Like a page turning. No, Miss Vance. I am not." He stepped past her. He did not touch her. He did not raise his voice. He walked to the door. He paused with one hand on the knob. "You will continue your work here tonight. You will report what you find to Adrian in the morning. You will tell him about Trent. You will tell him about the laundry truck. You will give him a small victory. He will be pleased. He will trust you a little more. And then we will see what comes next. Why are you telling me this?" He turned his head. He smiled. "Because your father did not know who I was, Miss Vance. He died chasing a name he had circled on a yellow legal pad. I want you to have what he did not. I want you to know my face. I want you to walk out of this room tonight understanding exactly who you are dealing with." He paused. "And then I want you to choose. Choose what? Whether to be useful to me, or to die the way he did." He opened the door. He stepped out. He closed the door behind him. The lock clicked. The fluorescent overhead hummed. Nell stood alone in the records room. with a photograph in her apron, and a name in her head, and a fire 16 years old, burning suddenly back up to the surface of her skin. She did not move for a long time, then she did. She walked to the door. She let herself out. She finished her shift. She emptied the trash. She mopped the floors. She wiped down the freezer doors. She watched the laundry truck pull into the alley at 4:58. She watched the driver load the hampers. She watched the drive away. She walked out the service door at 5:15 into the cold blue dawn. The black sedan was at the curb. The window rolled down. Mark O'Brien was driving. She looked at him. She thought about the photograph in her apron. She thought about her father's watch on her wrist that was no longer attached to her father. She thought about Crawl's smile. Marco looked at her. He did not say anything. He waited. She got in. She did not speak the whole drive, neither did he. When he pulled up to her building, he stopped and let the engine idle. He looked straight ahead, Miss Vance. Yes, whatever Crawl said to you tonight. She did not answer. He kept looking straight ahead. He's been saying it to people for 30 years. What does that mean? It means he's lying about half of it. Which half? He turned his head. He looked at her. His face was a wall a person could lean against if they were tired enough. That's what we need to find out. She got out. She closed the door. The sedan pulled away. She walked up 4 flights to her apartment. She let herself in. She closed the door. She slid down the door. She sat on the floor in her cleaning uniform, with a photograph in her apron, and a letter against her ribs, and a badge in her sock, and her father's voice. In her head, saying the same thing he had always said, honey. The answer's never where they're drilling. She closed her eyes. She let herself, for 30 seconds, be 8 years old again. Then she opened them. She had a phone call to make. She had a man named Adrian Castellano to call. She had a story to tell him. Half of it would be the truth. The other half she would keep to herself, until she knew which half of Vincent Crawl was the lying half. She picked up the phone. She dialed. He answered on the first ring. Nell, I found your leak. A pause. She heard him breathe. Tell me, not on the phone, when? Tonight. Your restaurant. 4 a.m. Empty dining room. Just you, just me, just you. A longer pause. All right, the line went dead. Aura, at 4 in the morning, was a different animal. The lights were low. The chairs were stacked. The bar was wiped down. The brass rail glinted under a single pendant lamp the night manager had forgotten to kill. Outside on the avenue, a street sweeper rumbled past. Its brushes hissed against wet asphalt. The plate glass windows trembled, settled. Trembled again. Nell stood in the middle of the dining room. She did not sit. She did not pour herself water from the carafe on the bar. She held the trash bag. It dragged on the floor when she set it down. A thick, wet scraping sound. Hardwood under it. She felt the floor through her shoes. She had brought it from the alley. She had pulled it out of the hamper before the truck came. She had wrapped it in a second bag. And then a third, because the smell was already pushing through the plastic. Earth. Cold meat. Truffle musk strong enough to climb up the back of the throat. The dining room doors swung open. Adrian Castellano stepped through. Heavy. Wool overcoat. Dark sweater underneath. No tie tonight. The collar of the sweater turned up, like a man who had walked too far in the cold and had not bothered to fix it before coming inside. He had not shaved. His eyes had storm in them. He stopped 2 tables away. He looked at the bag. He looked at her. Show me. She bent down. She tore the plastic. The smell exploded. He did not flinch. He walked closer. Slow. The way a man walks toward an open coffin. He stopped at the edge of the table she had set the bag on. He reached in. His hand came out with a brick A5. He turned it over. He read the code on the vacuum seal. He set it back down. How much? 30,000 a week. Maybe more. How? Trent. Trent. He's the hand, not the head. A long silence. The street sweeper outside finished its pass and turned the corner. The room went quiet enough she could hear the refrigerators in the kitchen humming through the walls. Whose head? She did not answer right away. She thought about the photograph in her apron. She thought about Crawl's voice in the records room. She thought about Marco Bragan saying he's been saying it to people for 30 years. She thought about the badge in her sock. She made her choice. Vincent Crawl. He did not blink. He did not move. He looked at her the way a man looks at a horizon line just before a storm. You're sure? I have a recording. Trent crying on a stockroom floor at 1 in the morning. Crawl has been holding his daughter over his head. Trent's been bleeding the restaurant for 6 months to pay a debt that doesn't exist. Where's the recording? She pulled the small digital recorder from her apron. She set it on the table next to the bag of stolen meat. He looked at it. He did not pick it up. Play it. She pressed the button. Trent's voice, thin, shaking, trying to hold itself together, and failing in real time. He's got photos of my kid. He told me what would happen to her. I never wanted any of this. I never wanted any of it. Then a long, ragged silence. Then a single hiccuping sob. She pressed stop. Adrian did not speak for a full minute. He turned his back to her. He walked to the bar. He poured himself a small splash of scotch from a bottle she did not recognize and probably could not have afforded. He did not drink it. He just held the glass. How long have you known? Since last night. Why didn't you call me last night? Because I had to be sure. Sure of what? That Trent wasn't the head. He turned around. And you decided this when? At 11:06. In a stockroom. After he stopped crying. A short pause. You waited 5 hours to call me. I needed to see if the truck came. And it came. 5:02. Plate AHT 4419. Driver in a brown jacket. He pulled in. He loaded the hampers. He drove east. Toward the river. He set the glass down without drinking. Marco. The dining room doors opened. Marco Bragan stepped through. He had been standing in the kitchen the whole time. She had not heard him. She wondered, briefly, how long he had been on the other side of the door listening. She wondered briefly what he had heard. She did not ask. Plate AHT 441, Adrian said. Brown jacket. East. Fine. On it, on. Marco, stop, don't kill him. Marco's eyebrows lifted a fraction. Just a fraction, sir. I want him alive. I want the warehouse. I want whoever he hands the food to. I want the whole chain. Understood. Marco looked at Nell. He did not nod. He did not need to. He left the dining room doors swung shut behind him. Adrian came back to the table. He sat down across from the trash bag the way a man sits down across from a dinner he is not going to eat. He looked at her. She did not sit. Why did you take it? Take what? Whatever you took out of the box last night. She felt her face do something. She did not know what. She made it stop. What box? Nell. Mr. Castellano. Adrian. She did not answer. He waited. He waited the way a man waits, who has waited for harder things than this. She put her hand into her apron. She pulled out the badge. She set it on the table next to the recorder. He did not pick it up. He read the name. He read it twice. He looked up. Frank Vance, my father, how? He died in a fire. March 17th, 1998. He was investigating your family. A long pause. He did not move. He looked at the badge. He looked at her. He looked at the badge again. How did you know it was in the box? I didn't. I saw it when the lid came open. I took it before you noticed. Why? Because I knew if I left it there, I would never see it again. Why was it in my grandfather's box? That's the question. He sat back. He ran a hand down his face. Slow. The exhaustion came back into him like a tide returning. The Cleanshaven-controlled man at the desk 12 hours ago was gone. The man in the chair from the first night was back. What did you want from me? He said. I came because of Crawl. You came because of him. I read my father's notes last night. He had 6 names. He crossed off 5. He circled 1. Castellano, no. He looked up. Crawl. She nodded. He did not move for a long time. My grandfather built that box, he said. In 1962, he kept his most important papers in it for 50 years. When he died, my father inherited it. My father never used it. He told me once it was not for him to use. He told me he was keeping it for when it mattered, and your father died 6 years ago. Cancer. The same as your mother, I think? She did not answer. My father never told me about the badge. He never told me about your father. He never told me what was in the box. Maybe he didn't know. He knew. Then why didn't he tell you? Because he could not trust me with it yet. Or he could not trust the men around me with it. I will never know which. She did not speak. He looked down at the badge again. My father knew, Nell. He knew about Frank Vance. He knew about the fire. He knew who started it. And he hid the evidence in a box so tightly that nobody could open it. But a woman with the right kind of patience and the right kind of dirt under her fingernails. She felt the floor shift under her. He looked up. His eyes were not the storm anymore. They were the calm after. He left it for you, Nell. He didn't know. It was you, but he left it for someone like you. He left it for Frank Vance's daughter. Whoever she turned out to be, she did not answer. She could not answer. There was nothing she could say. She had carried 16 years of an answerless question. And the man across the table had just given her half of an answer she had not known she was allowed to receive. She blinked. She did not let the blink turn into anything else. He pushed the badge toward her. Take it back. It's yours. She did not pick it up. She left it on the table between them. Not yet. He called Hayes from the bar phone. He did not use his cell. He did not use any phone with an address attached to it. He used the bar phone, the way old men use old phones, with both hands, standing up, speaking in clipped sentences that did not contain a single specific noun. She watched him dial. She watched him speak. She watched the other man on the other end of the line listen. She did not hear what Adrian said. She did not need to. She knew the shape of what he was saying. I need you tonight. Bring it, he hung up. He came back to the table. He sat down. Hayes is an hour out. Who, a friend of my father's? A federal man. Still active. He owes us a favor that has been waiting for 30 years to be called in. She nodded. She did not ask why a Castellano had a federal man on the hook. She would ask later. She would ask everything later. For now, she had a plan. She told him the plan. She told him fast, in short sentences. The way her father used to tell her how to do a thing she had never done before, when she was small, when he was teaching her how to ride a bike, or change a fuse, or check a deadbolt for a tampered pin. Adrian listened. He did not interrupt. When she was done, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "It'll get you killed." It might. There are other ways. Not this fast. Why does it have to be fast? Because Crawl is going to know I told you. The minute Marco grabs the truck driver, Crawl is going to know. He has people in the warehouse. He has people in the city. He has people in this room, probably. Even now that I have not noticed. You think he has people in my organization? I know he does. How? He told me. Last night. He said we will see what comes next. He said it like a man who already had a piece on the board. Adrian's jaw worked. He looked at the badge on the table. He looked at the trash bag. He looked at, all right. How do we sell it? I betray you. Up to him. To him. I walk into his office at sunrise. I tell him I want out. I tell him you are dangerous, and I am scared. I tell him I'll give him what he wants for safe passage. What does he want? Everything. The ledger, the names, the accounts. Your grandfather's box. The whole inheritance. And you give it to him. I give him a copy. A fake. A version. Padded with enough real names to look real. With a tracker in the spine. He'll check it. He'll check it later. He'll grab it now. He'll meet his buyer, Diego Mero. Yes. You're sure, I'm sure. How? She paused. Because he isn't selling out one family. He's selling out two. He's been working for Mero for at least a year. Maybe longer. He's not your accountant. He's Mero's mole in your house. Adrian closed his eyes. He closed them for a long time. When he opened them, they were wet. He did not let the wet turn into anything. He nodded once. All right, Adrian. Yes. What? Marco comes. He looked at her. To the meat. Yes. Why? She did not answer that one. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, I'll tell him. She slept for 2 hours on the couch in Adrian's apartment. She did not want to. He insisted. She did not have time to argue. He sat in a chair across the room while she slept. She was aware of him there, in the way a person who has not been protected in a long time is aware of being protected. It was a strange feeling. She did not let herself trust it. She did not let herself not trust it either. She just slept. She woke at 6:30. The sky outside the window was the color of dishwater. Marco was at the door. He had been gone 3 hours. He had come back with the truck driver in the trunk of a car. The driver was not dead. He had given them an address, a warehouse, Riverside, loading bay number 4, a meet at midnight. It checked out. It checked out the way a thing checks out when a man is afraid enough to tell you the truth and not yet afraid enough to lie better. Nell ate a piece of toast Adrian made her. She did not taste it. She put on a coat Adrian gave her. It was too big. It was warm. She walked out of the building at 7. She got in a cab. She rode to Vincent Crawl's office. She did not look back. She did not need to. She knew Marco was behind her, in a different car. She knew Adrian was on a phone. She knew Hayes was somewhere making calls she would never hear about. She walked into Crawl's office at 7:32. The receptionist did not stop her. The receptionist had been told. She walked past the receptionist and down the hall and through the door at the end of the corridor and into the office, where Vincent Crawl sat behind a desk, made of a wood she could not identify with a window, behind him that looked at the wrong side of the river. He smiled when he saw her. "Miss Vance, Mr. Crawl, coffee?" "No. Sit." She sat. He folded his. He waited. She let him wait. She watched a small clock on the wall behind him. The second hand crawled. She broke first. "On purpose. I want out." His smile widened a fraction. "Of course you do. I'll give you what you want. Will you the ledger? The accounts, the locations, everything in the box? And what do you want in return? Safe passage. A new name. Enough money to disappear. And your word." "My word about what?" "That you don't follow me," he laughed. A small laugh. Dry. Like the rustle of a page. "Miss Vance, I have not followed anyone in 20 years. People come to me. Then your word that nobody you know follows me either." "Ah." He nodded slowly. He studied her for a long time. She let him. She let him weigh her the way he had probably weighed every person who had ever sat in that chair. Adrian's father. Adrian's grandfather. Maybe her father. Once. In a different room. On a different morning. She did not know if her father had ever sat in front of Crawl. She suspected he had. She suspected this was where the circled name on the yellow legal pad had come from. "When can you bring it? Tonight? Where?" "You tell me." "No, you tell me." "I want to see if you've thought about it." She paused. She let the pause look like calculation. The warehouse on the river. Loading bay 4. His smile froze. For a quarter of a second, she caught it. He caught her catching it. He recovered fast. "Why there?" "Because I know it. Because nobody goes there at night. Because I want this finished in a place nobody will look at twice tomorrow." "All right. Midnight." Midnight. Just you, just me. A long silence. He stood up. He walked around the desk. He stopped in front of her. He bent down slightly. Not threatening. Almost paternal. He looked at her the way her ninth-grade English teacher had once looked at her on the day Nell turned in a paper that was better than the rest of the class. And the teacher had not yet decided whether to be proud of her or suspicious of her. "You are doing the smart thing, Miss Vance, am I?" "Yes, your father would have lived if he had done the smart thing." She did not answer. He smiled. "I will see you tonight." She stood up. She left. She walked out of the building. She got in a cab. The cab took her 4 blocks. She got out. Marco's car pulled up at the curb 3 seconds later. She got in. She did not speak. He drove. She closed her eyes. She did not let herself cry. She did not have time to cry. The crying was for after. The warehouse smelled like rust and oil and old river. She had been there since 11. She was sitting in the back of a black town car, parked in shadow at the edge of the loading lot. The driver was not a driver. The driver was Hayes, late 50s, crew cut, eyes that had not slept badly even once. He had not said more than 9 words since she had met him at the safe house at 9:45. He did not need to say more than 9 words. He was the kind of man whose silence was a sentence. Crawl's car arrived at 11:50, a black town car, heavier than hers, tinted everything. He stepped out alone. He stood by the front of his car with his hands in the pockets of his charcoal overcoat. He waited. He waited the way patient men wait, without moving, without checking a watch. Marrow arrived at midnight. 2 cars, SUVs, dark. 4 men got out of one, 3 out of the other. Diego Marrow stepped out of the back of the second SUV. He looked like a man who had been promised a meal. He smiled at Crawl. Crawl did not smile back. That was the first wrong note Nell heard. Crawl always smiled. She turned her head a fraction toward Hayes. Hayes was already watching it. "Wait," he said. She waited. Crawl walked to Marrow. He did not bring the ledger. Marrow looked at his hands. Morrow's smile slipped. The tune sheet spoke for 40 seconds. She could not hear what they said. She could see Seat's shoulders go up. She could see his chin drop. She could see Crawl's free hand move toward the inside of his coat in the small, careful way men move toward their coats when they want a thing that is not yet a gun to almost be a gun. Marrow said something fast. Crawl said something faster. A sound not loud pop. A small dry pop, like a paper bag at a child's birthday party. Marrow's body folded. His knees went first, then his hips, then his shoulders. He hit the asphalt face down. His men froze for the half second. A smart shooter knows he has. Crawl fired 3 more times. 2 of Marrow's men went down. The third dove behind the SUV. It happened in 5 seconds. Nell did not breathe. Hayes said, "Now." The lot lit up. Floodlights snapped on along the warehouse roof. Engines roared. 3 black SUVs cut into the lot from the east. 2 from the west. Marco Bragan's car came from the south. A federal van came from behind the warehouse itself. FBI. Hands, the voice came over a loudspeaker. Crawl did not run. He turned toward Hayes's car. He saw her in the back seat. He smiled. He raised the gun. She did not move. She heard the shot. She did not feel it. Hayes had stepped out of the driver's side and was already returning fire across the hood. She heard the crack of Hayes's pistol. She heard the answering crack of something else. She felt the back window of the town car break. She ducked. She did not scream. She crouched on the floor of the back seat with her arms over her head, and she listened to a gunfight she could not see. It lasted 19 seconds. She counted. She did not know why. She counted. At second 19, she heard a single voice say, in the loud, calm tone of a man who had done it 100 times before, "Clear." Then she heard another voice say, "Man down." Hayes opened the door. She climbed out. She did not look at Crawl first. She looked for Marco. Marco was on the ground. He was on his back. His suit jacket was open. There was a red bloom in the middle of his white dress shirt that had been a small bloom 30 seconds ago and was now a larger bloom. Adrian was already there. Adrian was on his knees in the wet asphalt of the loading lot. He had Marco's hand in both of his own. His back was bent forward in the shape of a man saying a prayer he had forgotten the words to. Marco's lips were moving. Nell ran. She slid to the ground beside him. She put her hand on Marco's chest. She did not know why. She did not know what good it would do. Marco looked at her. His eyes were already going somewhere she could not follow. But they focused for a long moment on her face. He smiled, a small smile, not the smile of a man who was dying, the smile of a man who had finished a long job. "Tell your father," he said. He stopped. She leaned closer. He gathered himself. "Tell your father. I kept my word." She nodded. She nodded fast. She nodded because she did not trust her voice. "I will. I will. I'll tell him." He breathed once more. He breathed out. He did not breathe in. His hand went soft in Adrian's hands. Adrian made a sound. It was not a sob. It was not a word. It was a sound that lived underneath all the words men of a certain age have stopped knowing how to say. It came up out of him from a place he had not visited since he had been a boy. He bent forward over Marco's chest. He pressed his forehead to Marco's forehead. He did not move for a long time. Nell looked away. She looked at the body of Vincent Crawl. He was 30 feet away, face down, one hand still loosely curled around the gun. Hayes was standing over him, with his pistol holstered now. Hayes was on a radio. Hayes was already 3 steps into the next part of the night, the part that involved paperwork and a federal report and a story for the morning papers that would be almost, but not entirely true. She did not feel triumphant, feel sad. She felt nothing for a moment. Then she felt the long, slow ache of something that had been waiting 16 years to set itself down. She put her hand on Marco's chest one last time. His shirt was warm. It would not be for long. She stood up. She let Adrian be alone with him. The funeral was 8 days later. It rained. It rained in the small, steady way it rains in early November, when the city is not yet ready for winter, and is no longer pretending it is fall. Marco Bragan was buried with a flag on the casket. A flag because Hayes had pulled the right strings with the right people in the right offices. Because Hayes had filed the right paperwork. Because 26 years after Marco Bragan had walked into an organization as an undercover federal officer, and 23 years after his cover had collapsed, and his agency had quietly written him off as a loss, somebody had reopened his file and stamped it with the word active. He had died active. He had died in the line. He had died, the paperwork said, in pursuit of a 16-year-old open case that had finally found a chap. Nell stood in the rain at the edge of the small group. Adrian stood next to her. Hayes stood on the other side. A junior agent she did not know read the words. A junior agent reads at the grave of a man whose name no one knew. She did not hear most of it. She heard the part where they fired 3 rifle volleys into the air. She heard the part where they handed the folded flag to nobody. Because Marco had no family living. Because Marco had outlived everyone he had ever loved. Because his entire life had ended up belonging to a country that had spent 23 years pretending he had stopped existing. Hayes accepted the flag. Hayes walked over to her after. He held it out. He had no one else, Hayes said.
I'm not family. You're as close as he had.
She did not argue. She took the flag. She held it against her ribs. She felt the corners through the wool of her coat. She walked away from the grave slowly. Adrian walked with her. They did not speak for a long time. When they got to the gate of the cemetery, she stopped. She turned to him. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what? For all of it. For what my family did to your father. For the years your mother carried alone. For Marco. For Adrian," he stopped. My father did not believe in revenge, I know. He believed in the work. He used to say the work was the only thing that survived him. I know. Today the work survived him." She did not say more. She did not need to. He nodded. He looked at her for a long time. Not the math from the first night. Not the calculation from the office. Just a man, standing in a wet cemetery, looking at the only person in the world who had walked through this fire on the same side of it that he had. He held something out, a key, small, brass, old, older than anything else in his pockets. She looked at it. "What is this?" "There are 7 boxes," he said. 7. My grandfather built 7. 1 for each city my family had business in. Each box has a badge in it. Each badge belonged to a cop who died chasing my family. My father knew. He could not face it. He kept them locked. He did not have the courage to open them. And I have the courage. But I don't have the eyes. She did not take the key yet. Why me? Because you found the first one without knowing it was there. Because you saw the dirt nobody else could see. Because you are your father's daughter." She looked at the key. She thought about her father. She thought about her mother. She thought about Marco on the wet asphalt. She thought about 6 cities she had never been to. She thought about 6 cops whose daughters might be out there. Waitresses, cleaners, teachers. Women who did not know yet that their fathers had not died the way they had been told. Women who had been told the same lie she had been told. She took the key. It was heavy. It was all going to be heavy. She put it in her pocket. "I'll need a bottle of vinegar." He did not smile. But the corner of his mouth lifted. It was the closest she had ever seen him come to a smile. "You'll have one," he said. She nodded. She turned. She walked through the gate of the cemetery and into the rest of her life. The flag was in her arm. The key was in her pocket. The badge of Frank Vance was, where it had been every day for the last week, in the inside pocket of her coat against Rom's. She did not look back. She did not look back. She did not need to. The story behind her was a story that had finally ended. The story ahead of her was a story that had only just opened the door. She walked toward it the way a woman walks toward a door. She had been waiting all her life to open. Slowly, steadily, with the patience of someone who already knew how to read the dust.